What are the main experiences in terms of planning, method, and the challenges that you face when you manage investigations of the kind of the Panama Papers?
Well, I think you do have to have some sort of method, but my method is quite reasonably simple. I basically only ask 3 simple questions before every story. You know, one of them being, is something of concern. You know, obviously you have to write about stories, I think, that generally concern people. For us, it's always an issue, not just about concern people in one country, but it's got to be a global issue. So you've got to pick the right topic, I think. I mean, I think underestimated basically in terms of, you know, is putting time into getting the right story in the first place and testing it before you introduce it to other people. The other thing I always look for is systemic failure in a story. So if there's a system that's designed to protect people and it's broken, for me that's a story. You know, and then that continues on with, you need patterns. If you step out of your house tomorrow and you step into a pothole in front of your home, it's of concern to you, but it's not necessarily of concern to the other people in the room, because it, you know, but if everyone's stepping into potholes, then you've got a systemic failure somewhere that the council isn't actually fixing the potholes. So you've got yourself a story. The third thing I always ask, and this is controversial, and there's no point in doing stories unless you can get some sort of result. So you have to have impact for a story. So when you're exposing something or wrongdoing, you want to think at the beginning, what do we want to happen after we publish? You know, resignations, government inquiries, public protests, that's what I would call impact. But after that, that's it. They're the only 3 things I think about. You know, I do put a lot of thought into the story in the first place. And then what can we do when we're writing our stories to make sure that the government or whatever it is you want to react to this actually are being forced to react to it. You know, so you're creating social change of some kind.
Once that's decided and you have these 3 questions, you know, kind of answered, or at least a direction, in terms of working with teams from different parts of the world, languages, you know, sources, how to manage all of that, do you have a kind of code of ethics, for example, or?
Well, our simple is just that we want them all to share everything with each other. So no matter how irrelevant it might seem to them, if they find something in the document, say we make a lot of documents available to the reporters, you find every reporter has got the same essential motivation. They love the story. So again, it goes back to that first question. Come to them with the right story, and you basically are giving them what they want in the first place, and they're able to buy into the collaboration, they're able to buy into your methods, you're able to impose rules on them, which is basically, let's all share everything we find as we go along. Let's make sure, you know, we built a virtual newsroom for the project, make sure you go into it every day. When you do find something of interest, tell your colleagues about it. So, but it's all driven by that. If you didn't have that story in the first place, you wouldn't get their attention and you wouldn't be able to impose these kind of rules. But after that, it's really hands-off, because they need to help each other.
And about this proposal of a methodology that I showed you, do you think that could help? You don't find a use for it? Would you add something, get rid of something? Just your honest view.
I just think it's too complicated. I think there are too many steps there. I think you need to refine. When I was trying to work out what exactly, you know, my methods of working, I would go and listen to lots of different, you know, go and read pretty much all of these, you know, big people like Chuck Lewis, other famous investigative reporters, and what they presented to conferences as methodology, and you know, found that often they would, you know, produce these very long lists, and after a while you just got to, but I'm not going to remember all those things, so I think you need to refine and refine and refine. It's like when people tell you how to write, you need to lose a lot of the words to get, you know, to get the meaning across. So the more simple you can make it, the better. But there's nothing wrong with the methodology at all. I mean, it's all very logical. You know, we would probably apply this kind of thinking to everything we do. It's just that I never thought of putting it down in so many different steps. Don't get me wrong, I'm a great believer in process. I'm just, you know, I tend to have, you know, for instance, I've got a great data team that's run by Mark Arbor, who's in charge of the data team. She is very much into process. She has processes, diaries, you know, meetings, stand-up meetings almost every day as well. And I'm kind of like a different kind of journalist. I'm more of a, you know, instinctual journalist, I think. But for other people, they need, I mean, and she says that her people need that process. They need to know that they're all marching. But I think it's easier for me to have, you know, I mean, I'm older, I've been through it before, you know, I think with younger, especially if you've got data-driven people, they do like, their brains think that way. So if that's what they think, then that's what they need, then give them what they need, apply. But for me, it wouldn't work for me to come in and say, I want you to do 12 things today. Because I'm going to go, I spend more of my time thinking about what I'm supposed to do next than doing my job. I think the other thing we forget is that we're all human beings and everyone has a different way of working.
Well, the idea that I'm suggesting with this is a proposal, and maybe you take some of the steps.
Yes, yeah. Or you might take some of the steps for someone like me, but then you might apply more of the steps for somebody else, whatever their needs are. I find when you're managing people, you need to realize that they all work differently in different ways, and you need to work out what they need more, to be able to give them. If you're a manager, your job is to essentially allow them to do their best work. That's essentially that's what a good manager should do. But everyone's human and different, so therefore you need to work out what makes Mar work best, what makes Marino or Mike or whoever it is on your team, and they'll need different things from you as a manager. But you want them to come in every day doing their best work, so it's easy for me to know what my task is.
Is it something that you do start working with a hypothesis that you have to test? Is that?
Yeah, I always, but again, hypothesis for me is just simply asking questions. What's the story here? Can we use this material, or whatever that happens to be that question? It just depends on what scenario you're facing. Like if I was using the Panama Papers as an example, then our first questions will be, our first question was, can we use this material? It's clearly taken by somebody without the permission of the firm that we got the material from. First question. Once you get that answered by the lawyers, then you say, well, okay, what's the issue here? One of the things that you're looking at in the offshore world is that a lot of what's happening is perfectly legal. So do we have a story or not? And for me, that's the second question you have to ask. Well, what is the story? And for me, the story here was, even if it is legal, that actually makes it more interesting, because it's kind of a surprise factor that weren't expecting. It's easy to get a document and it shows clear wrongdoing. Well, that's an easy story. But when you've got something that's much more nuanced, then you've got an extra set of questions to ask yourself. Well, what is, and is it as black and white as it looks? Or if there's shades of grey in there, you've got to factor that in as a journalist.
It would be the most difficult or most common challenges when working with journalists cross borders?
Challenges are basically ones you've got cultural challenges, you've got language challenges. It's setting the ground rules at the beginning. How are we going to work? We mostly work in Spanish and English, mainly because a lot of my staff are Spanish speakers. We also speak German, we also speak French. But yeah, language is the first issue. You need to have a common, rules around language. So we more or less work in English, which is great for me because my language skills are terrible. But other things is just understanding culture. For instance, in a place like India, it is perfectly normal for you to pay for someone to go and find a court document for you, whereas in America that's a no-no. Paying for anything? Absolutely not. But you have to learn, at least I've learned, is that you need to allow the journalists to do whatever it is that's the normal practice in their country. And you can't impose American ethics or rules across the whole world, or English ethics and rules across the whole world, or Uruguayan, or whatever it is. That each journalist has got to be able to work within the environment, their own ethics and their own standards, and allowing them to do that. So if it's okay to buy a document in India, that's fine for the Indian journalists to do that. I couldn't do it, but let them do